There was a time when he wandered from place to place begging for bread, but later came a time when people longed for his autograph. In 1894, a tramp rode the rods of a freight train into Buffalo and began begging for food from door to door. A policeman arrested him for vagrancy, and a judge sentenced him to 30 days of hard labor in the penitentiary. For an entire month, he broke stones and survived on nothing but bread and water. Yet, only 6 years later, just 6 years after that miserable experience, this tramp, this former beggar, became one of the most sought-after men on the West Coast. He was entertained by California's elite and hailed by novelists, critics, and editors as one of the brightest stars on the literary horizon. He never attended high school until he was 19, and he died at just 40 years old. But in that short span, he left behind 51 books. His name was Jack London, the author of The Call of the Wild. When Jack London wrote The Call of the Wild in 1903, he became famous overnight. Editors clamored for his work. Yet, despite the book's success, he earned very little money from it. Publishers and later Hollywood film producers made around £200,000 from the story. London himself, however, sold all the rights for a mere £400. If you want to write a book, the first essential requirement is to have something to write about. That was one of the great secrets of Jack London's astonishing success. He had lived an extraordinarily adventurous life. He packed 10,000 colorful experiences into his short and feverish existence. He had been a sailor before the mast, a longshoreman, an oyster pirate, and a gold miner. He hunted seals in the far north. He roamed half the world and even wrote a book about his experiences as a tramp. He often went hungry. He slept on park benches, in haystacks, in boxcars, and on the hard ground, sometimes waking up to find himself lying in a pool of water. He was so exhausted at times that he would fall asleep while clinging to the underside of a moving train. London was arrested countless times for vagrancy in America and even spent time in prisons in Mexico, Manchuria, Japan, and Korea. His childhood was scarred by poverty and hardship. He ran wild with a gang of hoodlums who roamed the waterfront of San Francisco Bay. School? He scoffed at school and frequently played truant. One day, however, he wandered into a public library and picked up Robinson Crusoe. He was instantly captivated. Hungry as he was, he didn't even go home for supper. The next day, he rushed back to the library to devour more books. A new world opened up to him. A world as strange and colorful as the Baghdad of the Arabian Nights. From that moment on, Jack London developed an unquenchable passion for reading. He sometimes read 10 to 15 hours a day, devouring everything from dime novels about Nick Carter to the works of Shakespeare, from Herbert Spencer to Karl Marx. At 19, he decided to stop selling his muscles and start selling his brain. He was tired of tramping, of being beaten by policemen, and of being struck on the head by railway brakemen's lanterns. Determined to change his life, he enrolled in high school in Oakland, California. He studied relentlessly, barely sleeping, and achieved a remarkable feat. He crammed 4 years of coursework into just 3 months, passed the examinations, and gained admission to the University of California. Driven by an obsession to become a great writer, he studied Treasure Island, The Count of Monte Cristo, and A Tale of Two Cities over and over. Then he began to write feverishly, producing as many as 5,000 words a day, the equivalent of a full-length novel every 20 days. At times, he had as many as 30 stories submitted to editors simultaneously, yet all were rejected. He was simply learning his craft. Finally, one of his stories, Typhoon Off the Coast of Japan, won first prize in a contest sponsored by the San Francisco Call. His reward was a mere £4, and he was so broke he couldn't even pay his rent. That was in 1896, a dramatic year when gold was discovered in the Klondike. Telegraph wires carried the sensational news across the continent, thrilling the nation. Workmen abandoned their shops, soldiers deserted the army, farmers left their fields, and merchants locked their stores. The great gold rush had begun. Jack London joined the flood of fortune seekers heading north. He spent a year in the Klondike enduring unimaginable hardships. Eggs cost $1 apiece, and butter sold for 12 shillings and 6 pence a pound. He often slept on the frozen ground while temperatures plunged to 74 degrees below zero. Eventually, he returned to the United States penniless. Back home, he did whatever odd jobs he could find, washing dishes, scrubbing floors, working on docks and in factories. Finally, with only 10 shillings left, he decided to give up manual labor forever and dedicate himself fully to literature. That was in 1898. 5 years later, in 1903, he had published 6 books and 125 short stories, and had become one of the most talked about men in American literature. Jack London died in 1916, just 18 years after he truly began writing. In that brief time, he produced an astonishing body of work, averaging 3 books a year, in addition to countless stories. By the end of his life, his annual income was twice that of the President of the United States. The Call of the Wild, for which London earned only £400, has been translated into more than 20 languages. It has sold over 1.5 million copies and remains one of the most popular works in the history of American literature.